The ship that carried humanity's hopes was ugly. There was no other word for it. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the observation window of the transport vessel and looked at the Times Perseverance as it floated beside them. Its hull was a patchwork of different metals. Some parts were gray, some were dark brown, and some had a strange green color from the copper alloys used in its construction. The engines looked like they had been bolted on as an afterthought. The whole thing was barely 200 meters long. Elena took a deep breath. This was it. This was what humanity had to offer. "She's not much to look at," said Marcus Cole, stepping up beside her. He was the chief engineer who had spent 4 years building this vessel. His hair was gray at the temples, and his eyes had dark circles under them from too many sleepless nights. "But she's got it where it counts. The Corvins won't care about what's inside," Elena said. "They'll see the outside and laugh. Let them laugh." Elena turned to look at him. Marcus had a strange smile on his face. It was the smile of a man who knew something others did not. "You seem confident," she said. "I am." He tapped the window with his finger, pointing at the ugly little ship. "They've never seen anything like her. They don't know what she can do. And by the time they figure it out, it'll be too late." Elena wished she shared his confidence. In 3 hours, they would arrive at Axion Prime, the capital world of the Corvin Empire. The Corvins had ruled 1,000 star systems for 40,000 years. They had technology that humans could barely understand. Their smallest patrol ships were larger than the Times Perseverance. Their warships stretched for kilometers, powered by captured black holes. And humanity had been discovered only 15 years ago. A Corvin scout ship had stumbled upon Earth's first interstellar probe and followed its signal back to the solar system. The Corvins had studied humanity for a few years, then made contact. They classified humans as a Category 7 primitive species, the lowest rank possible for a spacefaring civilization. Now, humanity had been granted permission to present at the Grand Exhibition. It was a chance to prove themselves, to show that they deserved a higher place in the galactic order. Every species that wanted to rise in the Empire's hierarchy had to demonstrate their worth at the exhibition. Elena knew what was at stake. If they failed here, humanity would remain at the bottom forever. They would be laborers, servants, the species that others looked down upon. But if they succeeded, she didn't let herself think about success. Not yet. The transport ship entered the Axion system, and Elena got her first look at the Corvin homeworld. It was enormous, 3 times the size of Earth, wrapped in layers of artificial structures that extended from the surface into orbit. Massive stations floated around it like satellites, each one larger than Earth's moon. Ships of every size and shape moved through the space around it, thousands of them, maybe millions. And in the center of it all was the grand demonstration arena. It was a structure so large that Elena's mind struggled to comprehend it. It was shaped like a ring, but the ring was the size of a small planet. Inside the ring was empty space where demonstrations took place. Around the ring were viewing platforms that could hold billions of spectators. "My God," Elena whispered. "Yeah," Marcus said. "They like to show off." Their transport was guided to a docking port on one of the smaller platforms. A group of Corvin officials was waiting for them when they disembarked. The Corvins were tall, over 3 meters, with long, thin bodies covered in silver scales. Their eyes were large and black, with no visible pupils. They moved with a strange grace, like dancers or snakes. The leader of the group stepped forward and looked down at Elena with an expression she could not read. "Ambassador Vasquez," the Corvin said. Its voice was deep and resonant, translated through a device on its chest. "I am Coordinator Thesix. I will oversee your presentation." "Thank you, Coordinator," Elena said, keeping her voice steady. "We are honored to be here." Thesix's head tilted slightly. "You should be. It is rare for a Category 7 species to be granted this opportunity." The High Council debated for many cycles before allowing it. Some argued that it was a waste of time. "We hope to change their minds. That remains to be seen." He turned and gestured for them to follow. "Your vessel has been brought to the preparation bay. You have 6 hours before your presentation. The High Council will be watching, along with representatives from across the empire. They walked through corridors that seemed to go on forever. The walls were made of some kind of dark metal that absorbed light. Corvins and other species moved past them, all glancing at the humans with expressions ranging from curiosity to contempt. Elena noticed the other species watching them. She saw creatures with multiple limbs, creatures covered in fur, and creatures that floated instead of walking. All of them had one thing in common: they looked at the humans like they were insects. They reached the preparation bay, and Elena saw the Times Perseverance sitting in the middle of the vast space. Around it were other vessels being prepared for the exhibition. Each one was sleek and beautiful, designed with obvious care. They had smooth hulls that gleamed under the lights, elegant weapon systems, and powerful engines. And then there was the Times Perseverance. It looked like a child's toy next to the others. A group of Corvin engineers was standing near it, examining it with instruments. As Elena and Marcus approached, she heard them talking. "Look at the hull composition. It's not even uniform. They used at least 6 different alloys. And the engine design, it's a basic fusion system. My species stopped using those 10,000 years ago. How did they even get here? This thing looks like it would fall apart in a gravity well." One of them noticed the humans approaching and said something to the others. They all turned and stared. Elena saw the amusement in their black eyes. "Is this your vessel?" one of them asked. "Yes," Marcus said. "She's called the Times Perseverance." The Corvin made a sound that might have been laughter. A fitting name. It must take great perseverance to fly something so primitive. The other engineers joined in the laughter. Marcus' jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Elena stepped forward. "We appreciate your interest in our vessel. We look forward to demonstrating its capabilities." "I'm sure you do," the lead engineer said, looking at the Times Perseverance with open contempt. "I'm sure it has many capabilities." More laughter. Elena felt her face growing hot, but she kept her expression neutral. She had prepared for this. She had known they would be mocked. The hours passed slowly. Elena and Marcus stayed near the Times Perseverance, making final preparations. They ran diagnostic checks on all systems. They reviewed the demonstration plan again and again. They tried to ignore the looks and whispered comments from the other species. Finally, the time came. The Times Perseverance was moved to a launch bay that opened into the arena. Elena stood in the control room of the viewing platform, watching through a massive window. Below her, the arena stretched out in all directions, an empty space large enough to hold entire fleets. The viewing platforms were filling up. Elena saw Corvins and dozens of other species taking their seats. Above them all, on a platform that floated higher than the rest, sat the High Council. There were 12 of them, the oldest and most powerful Corvithans in the Empire. They had ruled for thousands of years, making decisions that affected trillions of lives. In the center of them sat High Arbiter Thrawn, the supreme leader of the Corvithan Empire. Thrawn was ancient. His scales had faded from silver to a dull gray. His body was bent with age, but his eyes were sharp and cold. When he looked toward the human vessel, Elena felt a chill run down her spine. A voice echoed through the arena, announcing the beginning of the exhibition. The first species to present was called the Thrill, a race of insectoid beings known for their manufacturing abilities. They showcased a massive construction vessel that could build space stations in a matter of days. The council watched with polite interest. When the demonstration ended, they gave a small nod of approval, and the Thrill left with satisfied expressions. More species followed. Each one had something impressive to show: advanced weapon systems, medical technologies that could cure any disease, propulsion systems that could cross the galaxy in weeks. The council watched them all, occasionally making notes, occasionally asking questions. Then it was humanity's turn. The Times Perseverance moved into the arena. On the viewing platforms, Elena heard the reactions begin immediately. Laughter. It started small, a few chuckles from the nearest platforms. Then it grew. Soon, the entire arena was filled with the sound of alien laughter. Species that had never agreed on anything in their history were united in their amusement at the primitive human vessel. Elena looked up at the High Council. Most of them were smiling, if their expressions could be called smiles. But Thrawn was not laughing. He was watching the Time's Perseverance with cold, calculating eyes. Coordinator Thessix's voice came through the communication system. The human delegation will now present their vessel. Ambassador Vasquez, you may begin. Elena took a deep breath and activated her microphone. Her voice echoed across the arena. Members of the High Council, honored representatives, thank you for this opportunity. Humanity is a young species. We have only been traveling among the stars for a short time. We do not have ancient technologies or vast resources. What we have is determination, creativity, and the will to survive. She gestured toward the Time's Perseverance. This vessel represents everything we are. It was built from the materials we had available. It was designed by engineers who had never seen alien technology. It may not look like much, but we believe it demonstrates humanity's potential. Silence. Then more laughter. A voice called out from one of the platforms. Potential for what? Being a cargo hauler. More laughter. Elena waited for it to die down, then continued. We request permission to conduct a live demonstration. We believe actions speak louder than words. She looked up at the High Council. Thrawn was leaning forward slightly, his eyes still fixed on the human vessel. After a long moment, he spoke. Very well, Ambassador. You may demonstrate your vessel's capabilities. His voice was cold and precise, each word carefully chosen. Coordinator Thessix, prepare a standard combat trial. Thessix's voice responded, Yes, High Arbiter. We will deploy 6 shielded target drones across a field of 50,000 kilometers. The human vessel will have 1 standard cycle to destroy them all. Elena's heart sank. 1 standard cycle was approximately 2 hours in human time, and shielded drones were designed to withstand attacks from advanced warships. She had seen other species fail to destroy even 1 drone in their demonstrations. But Marcus was smiling. He leaned over and spoke into her ear. Perfect. Marcus, those drones have shields that can stop antimatter weapons. I know. His smile grew wider. Tell them we'll do it in under 5 minutes. Elena stared at him. What? Trust me. She looked at her chief engineer for a long moment. She saw the certainty in his eyes. She thought about the 4 years he had spent building the Time's Perseverance. The sleepless nights, the secrets he had hinted at but never fully explained. She turned back to her microphone. High Arbiter, we accept the trial, and we request that the time be reduced to 5 minutes. Silence fell across the arena. Even the laughter stopped. The spectators looked at each other in confusion. 5 minutes? It was impossible. It was insane. Up on the council platform, Thrawn leaned back in his seat. For the first time, something like interest flickered in his eyes. You request 5 minutes? He said slowly. Yes, High Arbiter. And if you fail? Elena hesitated. Then we will accept whatever judgment the council sees fit. A long pause. Then Thrawn made a gesture with one of his long fingers. Granted. Deploy the drones. The arena's systems hummed to life. 6 drones shot out from launch ports around the ring, speeding away in different directions until they were scattered across the vast proving ground. Their shields activated, glowing with a faint blue light. Coordinator Thessix's voice echoed once more. The trial will begin in 30 seconds. Human vessel, prepare for combat. Elena watched the Time's Perseverance drift into position in the center of the arena. It looked so small, so fragile. Marcus, she said quietly. What did you build? He didn't answer. He was watching the ship with an expression she had never seen before. Pride. Fierce, burning pride. Begin, Thessix announced. The Time's Perseverance moved. It didn't move gracefully. It lurched forward, its engines flaring unevenly. More laughter came from the platforms. Then something changed. The ship's hull began to shift. Panels slid aside, revealing systems that had been hidden beneath the ugly exterior. Weapons ports opened. Sensor arrays extended. The whole vessel seemed to unfold like a flower blooming. Then a voice echoed across the arena. Not Elena's, not Marcus, but something else entirely. It was calm and mechanical, yet somehow alive. Owen Online. Engaging tactical analysis. Targets acquired. Elena turned to Marcus. What is Owen? Offensive Warfare Engagement Network, Marcus said. Our secret weapon. An artificial intelligence designed for one purpose: winning fights against superior enemies. Marcus, the Corvathans banned AI warfare systems thousands of years ago. They banned them because they were afraid of them. Marcus' eyes never left the Time's Perseverance. They've never seen an AI like Owen. None of them have. Because Owen wasn't built from alien technology. Owen was built from human experience. Thousands of years of humans fighting each other. Every war, every battle, every strategy ever devised. Owen learned from all of it. On the arena floor, the Time's Perseverance fired, but not ordinary weapons. Strange projectiles launched from its hull, tungsten rods that changed direction mid-flight, adjusting their trajectory as they moved. At the same time, clouds of tiny drones erupted from the ship, spreading across the arena in coordinated swarms. The first target drone detected the incoming weapons and activated its defensive systems. The shields flared, ready to absorb the impact. The tungsten rods hit the shield and passed through. The drone exploded. Gasps echoed across the arena. The shields on those drones were supposed to be impenetrable. Nothing should have been able to pass through them. Shield harmonic inversion, Marcus said softly. Owen analyzed the shield frequency in real time and adjusted the projectiles to phase through. Took about 3 seconds. 2 more drones exploded in quick succession. The swarm drones had reached them, and instead of attacking the shields directly, they burrowed into the small gaps where the shield emitters connected. They were inside the shields now, detonating against the vulnerable hull. The 4th drone tried to run. Its engines flared as it attempted to escape into the asteroid field at the edge of the arena. The Time's Perseverance pursued, but it didn't chase the drone directly. Predicted where the drone would go. Owen calculated the drone's most likely escape route in milliseconds and sent a volley of weapons to intercept. Another explosion. Elena looked at the clock. 90 seconds had passed. The 5th and 6th drones were the furthest away, almost at the edge of the arena. They were trying to use the asteroids for cover, hiding behind massive rocks to block incoming fire. Owen adapted. The Time's Perseverance launched a different kind of weapon, missiles that split into dozens of smaller projectiles, each one seeking a different path through the asteroid field. Some went left, some went right, some went up and around. They came at the drones from every direction at once. The 5th drone's shields flickered and failed. It exploded. The 6th drone made one last attempt to survive. It overloaded its shield generator, creating a bubble of energy so powerful that it vaporized incoming projectiles before they could reach it. Owen paused for exactly 1.4 seconds. Then the Time's Perseverance launched something new, a single, larger projectile that didn't aim for the drone itself. It aimed for the space beside the drone. The projectile detonated, but instead of an explosion, it released a pulse of energy that disrupted the electromagnetic field around the drone. The overloaded shield generator couldn't compensate. The feedback surge destroyed it from the inside. The 6th drone exploded. Elena looked at the clock. 18 seconds. Silence filled the arena. The laughter was gone. The amusement was gone. 1 million spectators stared at the ugly little human ship floating in the middle of the arena, surrounded by the debris of 6 supposedly indestructible drones. Elena looked up at the High Council. The members were frozen, their black eyes wide. Some of them turned to speak to each other in urgent, hushed tones, but Thrawn was not speaking. The High Arbiter was staring at the Time's Perseverance with an expression Elena recognized. It was not amusement. It was not contempt. It was fear. Marcus stepped up beside her. They're not laughing anymore. No, Elena agreed. They're not. She waited for the council to respond. She expected praise or at least acknowledgement. She expected them to recognize what humanity had accomplished. Instead, Thrawn rose from his seat. His voice was cold and hard when he spoke. The demonstration is concluded. The human delegation will return to their vessel and leave Corvathan space immediately. Their performance was noted. Elena's heart sank. High Arbiter, we request consideration for advancement. Denied. Thrawn turned away. This exhibition is over. Coordinator Thes-6, escort the humans from the arena. The viewing platforms began to empty. The spectators filed out in silence, still stunned by what they had witnessed. None of them looked at the humans. None of them spoke. Elena felt Marcus's hand on her arm. We should go. But we proved ourselves. We showed them what we can do. We showed them too much. Marcus's voice was grim. Look at Thrawn. He's not impressed. He's scared. And scared rulers don't give rewards. They eliminate threats. They were escorted back to the Times Perseverance by armed guards. The ship's airlock sealed behind them, and they were alone. Elena slumped into a chair on the bridge. 4 years of work. 4 years. And they just threw us out. It's not over. Marcus was at a control console, his fingers moving rapidly across the interface. Elena, you need to see this. She looked up. What? Owen intercepted something. A transmission from Thrawn's platform, sent immediately after our demonstration. It's encrypted, but Owen broke it. He played the message. Thrawn's voice filled the bridge, cold and merciless. The human species is hereby classified as an existential threat to the Empire. All human vessels are to be tracked and destroyed. Earth is to be sterilized. Begin immediately. No survivors. Elena felt the blood drain from her face. Marcus turned to look at her. His expression was grim, but his eyes held that same strange fire she had seen before. They were never going to let us rise, he said. No matter what we showed them, we were always going to be a threat. What do we do? Marcus smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Owen has already done it. The moment we intercepted that transmission, Owen relayed it to every human ship in the galaxy, every colony, every station, every vessel with a human on board. He turned back to the console. They wanted to destroy us while we were helpless. They're going to find out that we were never helpless. We were just waiting. Elena stared at him. Marcus, what have you built? He looked around at the Times Perseverance, the ugly, primitive ship that had just destroyed 6 indestructible drones in 18 seconds. I built a prototype, he said, and prototypes are meant to be copied. The Times Perseverance engines came to life. The ship turned toward human space, toward Earth, toward a war the Corvathans had just started. And on every human frequency, Owen's voice was broadcasting a single message. They are coming to destroy us. Prepare for war. The message spread across human space like fire through dry grass. Every ship, every station, every colony received Owen's transmission within hours. The intercepted order from High Arbiter's Thrawn played on screens and speakers throughout the solar system and beyond. Earth is to be sterilized. No survivors. People watched in silence. In the great cities, crowds gathered in public squares, staring at massive screens that showed the transmission again and again. On Mars colonies, workers stopped their machines and listened. On stations orbiting Jupiter, engineers and scientists put down their tools. For a long moment, humanity held its breath. Then they got to work. Admiral Chun stood in the command center of Earth Defense Command, watching reports flood in from every corner of human space. She was 63 years old, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too many battles. She had spent her life preparing for a war she hoped would never come. Now it was here. What's our status? She asked. Commander Rodriguez, her second-in-command, pulled up a display. Every military vessel has been activated. We have 47 combat ships in the solar system, another 32 spread across our colonies. The Times Perseverance is en route from Corvathan space, ETA 6 hours. 79 ships. Chen's voice was flat. Intelligence says the Corvathans will send at least 500. Yes, Admiral. And their smallest warship is 3 times the size of our largest. Yes, Admiral. Chun looked at the display. It showed Earth, blue, green, and beautiful, floating in the darkness of space. Billions of people lived there. Families, children, everything humanity had ever built, dreamed, or hoped for. Get me Marcus Cole, she said. An hour later, a communication link was established with the Times Perseverance. Marcus Cole's face appeared on the screen, tired but alert. Behind him, Elena Vasquez was visible, speaking with members of Earth's diplomatic corps. "Admiral Chun," Marcus said, "I assume you've seen the transmission." "The whole species has seen it, Mr. Cole. I need to know what we're working with." "That demonstration at the exhibition, was it real?" Marcus nodded. "Every bit of it. The Times Perseverance performed exactly as designed." "Then I need to understand something." Chun leaned forward. "You built that ship in 4 years with a fraction of the resources the Corvithans have. You created an AI that can adapt in real time. Weapons that can bypass their shields. How?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke. "Admiral, the Corvithans have been at the top of the galactic hierarchy for 40,000 years. They've fought wars, yes, but they've never faced a real challenge. Their technology evolved slowly because they never needed it to evolve quickly. They've been coasting on their success for millennia. And us? We've been fighting each other since we climbed down from the trees. Every generation of humans has faced some kind of conflict. We've developed weapons, strategies, and tactics not because we wanted to, but because we had to. When I built Owen, I didn't just program it with combat algorithms. I fed it every war in human history, every battle, every strategy ever devised by a human mind. Sun Tzu, Alexander, Napoleon, every military thinker who ever lived." Chin understood. "You built an AI that thinks like a human. I built an AI that thinks like humanity. All of us. Our creativity, our adaptability, our refusal to give up, even when the odds are impossible." Marcus' eyes were intense. "The Corvins don't understand what that means. They've never met a species like us. Can we win this war?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. He looked down at something off-screen, then back at the Admiral. "We can survive it, but I need to ask you something first. How fast can we build ships?" Chun frowned. "The Times Perseverance took 4 years to construct. That's because we were starting from nothing. Now we have the design. We have Owen. We have the manufacturing infrastructure of the entire species." Marcus pulled up a schematic on his end and shared it with the command center. "I designed the Times Perseverance to be ugly on purpose. I used mismatched alloys and crude-looking components because I wanted it to be underestimated, but I also designed it to be simple. Any shipyard that can build a cargo hauler can build this ship." Chun studied the schematic. It was elegant in its simplicity, modular components that could be mass-produced, systems that used common materials, a design philosophy that prioritized function over form. "How long?" she asked. "With full mobilization, we can produce 1 ship every 72 hours. If we convert civilian manufacturing as well, we can double that. And Owen can be copied. Each ship gets its own instance, but they're all connected. They share information in real time. Every time one Owen unit learns something, they all learn it." Chun turned to Rodriguez. "Begin full mobilization. Every shipyard, every factory, everything that can be converted. I want this species building warships around the clock." Rodriguez nodded and began issuing orders. Chun looked back at Marcus. "How long until the Corvithans arrive?" "Based on their standard fleet protocols, they'll assemble a proper invasion force before moving. That takes time even for them. We have maybe 3 weeks. 3 weeks to save humanity. 3 weeks to show them what they were made of." The following days were unlike anything in human history. A species that had spent centuries fighting itself turned its full attention to a common enemy. Old rivalries were forgotten. Old borders became meaningless. For the first time, humanity truly became one. Shipyards that had been building cargo vessels switched to producing warships. Factories that made civilian goods began manufacturing weapons. Scientists who had been working on separate projects came together to improve the Times Perseverance design. On Mars, the mining colonies increased their output by 300%. Raw materials flowed to Earth orbit, where construction stations worked day and night. Workers pulled double shifts, then triple shifts until they collapsed from exhaustion. Others took their places. Elena Vasquez became the voice of humanity. She broadcast messages to the species every day, updating them on progress and keeping their spirits up. She told them about the threat they faced, but she also reminded them of their strength. "They call us primitive," she said in one broadcast. "They laugh at our technology, but technology is not what makes a species great. What makes a species great is the will to survive, the courage to fight, the ability to adapt and overcome. These are the qualities that brought us down from the trees, out of the caves, across the oceans, and into the stars. These are the qualities that will save us now." Meanwhile, Owen was evolving. Each copy of the AI was learning, growing, becoming more sophisticated. They analyzed Corvan technology from the data gathered during the exhibition. They studied Corvathan military tactics from historical records. They ran simulations, millions of them, preparing for every possible scenario. And they found weaknesses. Corvan shields were powerful, but they had a pattern. Every shield system operated on specific frequencies, and those frequencies could be predicted and countered. Their weapons were devastating, but they were designed to fight enemies who used conventional tactics. Their ships were massive, but their size made them slow to maneuver. Owen shared this knowledge with human commanders. New strategies were developed. New weapons were designed. Marcus Cole oversaw the production of a weapon he called the Harmonic Inverter. It was based on the technology that had allowed the Times Perseverance to bypass the drone shields during the exhibition, but this version was larger, more powerful, and designed to work against warship-class shields. "Will it work against a Corvan battleship?" Chun asked when she saw the prototype. "In theory, yes." Marcus ran a hand through his hair. "In practice, we won't know until we try. Their ships have redundant shield systems. Even if we break through one layer, there might be others. Then we make sure we break through all of them." 2 weeks passed, then 2.5. In the shipyards of Earth orbit, vessels were being completed at an incredible rate. They weren't beautiful ships. They looked like their parent, the Times Perseverance. Ugly patchwork, cobbled together from whatever materials were available, but they were functional. They were armed, and each one carried an Owen unit ready to fight. By the end of the 3rd week, humanity had built 212 warships. Admiral Chun stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Times Defiance. It was the largest ship in the human fleet, twice the size of the Times Perseverance, though still tiny compared to Corvathan vessels. Around her, the fleet was assembled in formation, spread across the space between Earth and Mars. "Admiral," a sensor operator called out, "we're detecting a spatial distortion at the edge of the system. Multiple signatures." Chun looked at the tactical display. Points of light were appearing in the darkness of space, more and more with each passing second. "How many?" The operator's voice was tight with fear. 523 contacts, Admiral." Corvathan warship signatures confirmed. 523 ships. The smallest of them was larger than the Times Defiance. The largest were kilometers long, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. They had come to sterilize Earth, to wipe humanity from existence. Chun opened a channel to the fleet. "All ships, this is Admiral Chun. The enemy has arrived. They outnumber us. They outgun us. They think we are primitive, weak, and easy to destroy. Today, we prove them wrong." She paused, looking at the faces of her bridge crew. They were scared. They had every right to be. But beneath the fear, she saw determination. "Remember why we fight," she continued. "We fight for our homes, our families, our children. We fight for every human who has ever lived and every human who will ever live. The Corvathans want to erase us from history. We will not let them." Across the fleet, crews prepared for battle. Weapons systems powered up. Shields activated. Owen units synchronized their targeting data, sharing information at the speed of light. The Corvathan fleet advanced. It moved in perfect formation, a wall of warships that seemed to blot out the stars. At the front was the flagship of the Purge Fleet, a vessel called the Times Divine Mandate, 3 kilometers long, commanded by Fleet Master Vorin, one of the Empire's most decorated officers. Vorin looked at the human fleet with contempt. His sensors showed him 200 small vessels, poorly constructed, using primitive technology. They were clustered together like frightened animals. Pathetic, he said to his officers. These creatures dare to oppose us. Signal the fleet. Begin the purge. The Corvathan ships opened fire. Beams of energy lanced across space, each one powerful enough to vaporize a small moon. Missiles launched by the thousands, their warheads containing antimatter that could tear through any known material. But the human fleet was no longer where the weapons were aimed. The moment the Corvathans fired, Owen had already predicted their targeting solutions. The human ships scattered in a pattern that seemed chaotic but was precisely calculated. Energy beams cut through empty space. Missiles detonated harmlessly against asteroids that had been positioned as decoys. Vorin frowned. They're faster than expected. Adjust targeting. But adjusting took time. The Corvathan fire control systems were sophisticated but rigid. They needed to recalculate, update their solutions, and coordinate across hundreds of ships. The human fleet did not wait. They came in waves, not in the orderly formations the Corvathans expected, but in seemingly random groups that attacked from every direction at once. Some ships went left, some went right, some dove under the Corvathan fleet, some climbed above it, and they fought dirty. The first Corvathan ship to fall was a cruiser at the edge of the formation. 3 human vessels attacked it simultaneously, not with direct weapons fire, but with swarms of small drones that attached to its hull and began cutting through the armor. By the time the cruiser's crew realized what was happening, the drones had already reached the reactor core. The explosion lit up the void. What was that? Vorin demanded. What hit that ship? Unknown, Fleetmaster. We detected no weapons fire. It appears the ship was destroyed from the inside. Another explosion, then another. Human ships wove through the Corvathan formation, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted, always attacking from unexpected angles. A Corvathan destroyer powered up its main weapon, a beam capable of cutting through a planetary crust. It aimed at a cluster of human ships, but before it could fire, a single projectile struck its weapon array. The projectile didn't explode. Instead, it released a pulse of energy that disrupted the weapon's containment field. The destroyer's own weapon overloaded and detonated, destroying the ship from within. They're using our own weapons against us, one of Vorin's officers said, his voice filled with disbelief. Impossible. How could primitives understand our technology? But the humans understood. Owen understood every system, every weapon, every weakness. Owen had studied them all. The battle raged across the space between Earth and Mars. Ships died on both sides, human vessels destroyed by overwhelming firepower, Corvathan ships torn apart by weapons they had never seen before. A human destroyer was caught in the crossfire of 3 Corvan battleships. The shields failed. His hull began to break apart. The crew knew they were doomed. Instead of trying to escape, they turned their dying ship toward the nearest Corvathan vessel and accelerated to maximum speed. The collision tore through the battleship's forward section. Other human crews did the same. When their ships were damaged beyond repair, they used them as weapons. They rammed enemy vessels. They detonated their reactors in the middle of enemy formations. They ejected in escape pods and then manually guided missiles to their targets. Vorin watched in growing horror. He had never seen anything like this. The Corvathans fought for glory, for honor, for the Empire. These humans fought like nothing mattered except taking their enemies with them. Fleet Master, an officer reported. We have lost 73 ships. The human fleet has lost 104. 73 ships. In all his years of service, Vorin had never lost more than a dozen in a single engagement. And the humans had lost more, yet they had started with less than half his numbers. They should have been destroyed in the first 5 minutes. Pull back the fleet, Vorin ordered. Regroup at the outer planets. Retreat, Fleet Master? Regroup. Vorin's voice was cold. We underestimated them. That will not happen again. The Corvan fleet began to withdraw. Human ships pursued, harrying them, destroying stragglers, refusing to let them disengage cleanly. But the battle was slowing. Both sides were exhausted, their formations scattered, their numbers reduced. When the fighting finally stopped, Admiral Chun looked at the casualty reports. 108 human ships destroyed, 15,000 lives lost. It was the worst single-day loss in human history. But the Corvathans had lost more than 200 ships. 40% of their fleet was gone, and Earth was still there. Elena Vasquez broadcast a message to the human fleet and to the species watching from the planets below. Today we proved that we are not primitive. We are not weak. We are not easy to destroy. The Corvathans came to wipe us out, and we sent them running. This is not the end of the war. They will come back. They will bring more ships. But now they know the truth about humanity. We do not surrender. We do not give up. We fight until there is nothing left to fight with, and then we fight some more. Across human space, people cheered. They had survived the first battle. They had bloodied the greatest military power in the galaxy. But in her private quarters, Chun looked at the faces of the dead, 15,000 names, 15,000 families that would never see their loved ones again. And she knew this was only the beginning. Back on Axion Prime, High Arbiter Thrawn received news of the battle. He sat in silence for a long time, staring at the reports. 73 ships lost in the first engagement. More than 200 lost in the full battle. A purge fleet that was supposed to be invincible driven back by primitives. His advisors stood before him, waiting for his response. "This changes nothing," Thrawn finally said. "They surprised us with their desperation. It will not happen again." "High Arbiter," one advisor said carefully, "perhaps we should consider negotiation. The humans have demonstrated that they are a threat." Thrawn interrupted, his voice sharp as a blade. "A threat to be eliminated. Not negotiated with. Not appeased. Eliminated." He stood, his ancient body straightening with cold determination. "Send the second fleet. And the third. Strip the border defenses if necessary. I want every available warship sent to that system. I want Earth turned to ash. I want every human colony burned. I want their species erased from the galaxy so completely that in 1,000 years, no one will even remember they existed." The advisors bowed and left to carry out his orders. Thrawn stood alone in his chambers, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, in a tiny corner of the galaxy, a primitive species was refusing to die. He would not allow it. He could not allow it. Because if word spread that the Corvathan Empire could be challenged by primitives, if other species began to believe that resistance was possible, the Empire would fall. And Thrawn would burn every star in the galaxy before he let that happen. The second Corvathan fleet arrived 2 weeks after the first battle. The third fleet arrived 3 days after that. Together, they brought over 1,000 warships, the largest invasion force assembled in Corvan history. Fleet Master Vorin, who had survived the humiliation of the first engagement, was placed under the command of Grand Admiral Visera. She was old even by Corvathan standards, with scales that had turned almost white and eyes that held millennia of military experience. She had crushed rebellions across 100 systems. She had never lost a campaign. Visera studied the reports from the first battle with careful attention. She watched recordings of human tactics. She analyzed their weapons. "They fight without honor," she observed to her staff. "Without pattern, without predictability. They sacrifice themselves as weapons. They attack from all directions at once. They use deception and trickery where we use strength and order." "A primitive approach," Vorin said bitterly. "An effective approach," Visera replied coolly. "Do not make the mistake of confusing primitive with inferior. These humans have developed a form of warfare uniquely suited to their nature. If we continue to fight them as we fight everyone else, we will continue to lose." "What do you propose?" Visera brought up a tactical display showing the solar system. "We do not engage them directly. We use our numbers to encircle them. We cut off their supply lines. We destroy their manufacturing centers. We starve them before we kill them." It was a sound strategy. Against any other enemy, it would have worked. But humanity had been preparing. In the weeks since the first battle, the human fleet had grown. Shipyards worked continuously, producing new vessels every day. The designs had improved. Owen had identified weaknesses in the original Time's Perseverance pattern and corrected them. The new ships were faster, better armed, and more resilient. More importantly, the Owen network had grown as well. Each new ship added another node to the collective intelligence. Each battle made it stronger. Each simulation, each piece of data gathered made the entire network smarter. By the time the second wave of Corvithans arrived, Owen had become something more than an artificial intelligence. It had become a strategic mind that spanned the entire human fleet. Admiral Cheney received word of the Corvithan arrival while overseeing repairs to the Times Defiance. The ship had taken heavy damage in the first battle, but it was still functional. Cheney refused to transfer to another vessel. "Show me their formation," she ordered. The tactical display lit up with over 1,000 red dots representing Corvithan ships. "They're spreading out, moving to surround the solar system. They're not coming straight at us," Commander Rodriguez observed. "They're trying to encircle us first." "Smart." Cheney nodded slowly. Their new commander learned from the first battle. She knows we'll fight harder if we're defending Earth directly. She wants to weaken us first. Can we stop them? Cheney studied the display. The human fleet now numbered just over 300 ships, impressive growth but still vastly outnumbered. If the Corvithans succeeded in establishing a complete blockade, humanity would be trapped. "We don't stop them," she said finally. "We break out." Marcus Cole was on the bridge of the Times Perseverance when Cheney's orders came through. The plan was bold, desperate even. Instead of waiting for the Corvithans to complete their encirclement, the human fleet would strike at one section of the forming blockade with overwhelming force. "We're punching a hole," Marcus said as he reviewed the plan with Elena. "Concentrating everything we have against one part of their fleet. And then we keep hitting them. We don't let them settle into a siege. We keep them off balance. Keep them reacting to us instead of the other way around." Elena looked worried. "The casualties from the first battle will be nothing compared to what happens if they trap us here." Marcus's voice was grim. "If they surround us, they can take their time. Starve us out, bomb our colonies one by one. Our only chance is to never let them feel safe." The human fleet gathered in the shadow of Mars. 312 ships, arranged not in orderly formations but in loose clusters that could scatter and reform at a moment's notice. Across from them, the Corvithron Second Fleet, 500 warships, was moving into position to seal the inner system. Grand Admiral Thesera commanded from her flagship, the Times Eternal Dominion, confident that her superior numbers and firepower would crush the humans. Cheney gave the order to attack. The human fleet surged forward like a wave, but it wasn't a single wave. It was dozens of smaller groups, each moving independently, each controlled by an Owen unit communicating with all the others. Thesera watched the approaching enemy with calculating eyes. Predictable. They're concentrating their forces against our center. Reinforce that section. Crush them when they arrive. Corvithan ships moved to intercept, forming a wall of warships, weapons charged, shields at maximum. The human fleet didn't slow down. They accelerated. "They're going to ram us," Vorin said in disbelief. "Some of them," Thesera replied. Then something unexpected happened. The human fleet split. Half the ships continued straight toward the Corvithan line. The other half curved away, diving below the plane of engagement. A third, smaller and faster group had already moved around to the side undetected. "Where did those ships come from?" Thesera demanded. Her officers checked their sensors frantically. The ships had been hiding in the asteroid belt, running silent, waiting for the main fleet to draw attention. "It's a trap," Vorin said. The hidden ships struck the Corvithan flank. At the same time, the ships that had curved away came up from below. The main fleet hit the center with everything they had. 3 directions. 3 simultaneous attacks. The Corvithan formation, designed to stop a frontal assault, couldn't respond fast enough. Ships began to fall. The battle dissolved into chaos. Corvithan vessels tried to reposition, but every time they adjusted, the humans adjusted faster. Owen coordinated the entire battlefield, directing ships like a single organism with hundreds of parts. A Corvithan dreadnought found itself surrounded by 20 human vessels. Its shields flared under relentless fire. One by one, the shield generators overloaded. The captain ordered a counterattack, but before his weapons could fire, human drones slipped through shield gaps and latched onto the weapon arrays. Small explosions disabled the guns. More human ships closed in. They targeted engines, communications, sensors. Within minutes, the massive vessel was blind, deaf, and paralyzed. Then the humans pulled back and let it drift into another Corvathan ship. The collision destroyed both. The Sarah watched the disaster unfold with cold fury. Her fleet was being dismantled not by superior firepower but by coordination and strategy. Signal all ships. New formation. Create overlapping fields of fire. Don't let them isolate us. The Corvathans tried to regroup, but the humans wouldn't allow it. Then the humans unveiled a new weapon. Marcus Cole had refined the harmonic inverter into the Cascade Disruptor. It sent a wave disabling multiple shields at once. The Times Perseverance fired. A dozen Corvathan ships lost shields simultaneously for exactly 3 seconds. 3 seconds was enough. Human ships struck instantly. 8 ships destroyed in one strike. The Sarah finally showed fear. We have lost 163 ships. Human losses are 47. They're not fighting a battle, the Sarah said. They're fighting extermination. She ordered the Third Fleet forward. But Owen already knew. 50 human ships broke away to delay the Third Fleet, dropping mines, drones, and jammers, forcing them to slow. Every minute helped the main battle. At the same time, the human fleet kept crushing the Second Fleet. A Corvathan cruiser was isolated and forced to surrender. It was the first surrender in history. Word spread. Morale broke. When the Third Fleet arrived, they found devastation. The Sarah's flagship was surrounded and crippled. "You are defeated," Admiral Cheney said. The Sarah looked at the display, no escape, no victory. She ordered all ships to stand down. The battle ended. Hundreds of Corvathan ships drifted in silence. Cheney ordered their crews released and ships stripped of weapons. The Sarah warned them that her empire would never stop. Cheney replied, "Then we'll keep winning until they understand we are not prey. We're humanity and we don't give up." The evacuation took days. Corvathan crews filed into escape pods and were allowed to leave. Human salvage teams moved through the captured ships, stripping them of weapons, engines, and shield generators, anything useful. Marcus Cole oversaw the technology recovery. Every piece of Corvathan tech was analyzed by Owen and integrated into the network's knowledge base. Human ships began receiving upgrades. Corvathan shield technology was adapted to human vessels. Corvathan weapon systems were modified for human use. Elena Vasquez supervised the release of non-combatant prisoners. Among them were members of other species, servants and workers aboard the Corvathan ships. They were not Corvathans, and many had no loyalty to the Empire. One of them, a member of a species called the Yith, approached Elena. The Yith were small beings with large eyes and delicate hands. They were known throughout the galaxy as some of the best engineers in existence. They had been enslaved by the Corvathans for thousands of years. "Ambassador Vasquez," the Yith said. His voice was soft and precise. "I am called Nexus. I wish to speak with you about an opportunity." "What kind of opportunity?" Elena asked. Nexus looked around at the salvage operation. "You are taking Corvathan technology. You are learning from it. This is wise. But you could learn much faster." "How?" Elena asked. "We built most of their technology. We maintain it. We have been their engineers for millennia. We are also their slaves. We hate them. We want to help you." Elena was quiet for a moment. "Why should we trust you?" "Because the enemy of my enemy is my friend," Nexus said simply. "And because what you did here, defeating 2 fleets, showing mercy to the defeated, this is something we have never seen. The Corvathans conquer and destroy. You fight to survive, not to dominate. That is different, hopeful." Elena looked at the small alien for a long time, then nodded. "Welcome to the Alliance, Nexus. Let's see what we can build together." The news of the battle spread across the galaxy. It spread through Corvathan space, where it caused fear, anger, and whispered questions. It spread to slave species who began to wonder if freedom was possible. It spread to neutral powers who suddenly looked at humanity with new respect. And it spread to Axion Prime, where High Arbiter's Thrawn received the reports in silence. 2 fleets, over 800 ships, defeated by primitives. His advisors waited for his reaction. Some expected rage, others despair. Thrawn showed neither. His face was cold and still as stone. "This changes nothing," he said. "The humans have won a battle. They have not won the war. They cannot project power beyond their system. They cannot threaten our territory. They can only defend." "High Arbiter," one advisor said carefully, "perhaps this is an opportunity." The humans offered peace. Peace. Thrawn's voice was quiet, but it made the room tense. "You speak to me of peace with creatures who have humiliated us before the entire galaxy, who have destroyed invincible fleets, who have shown every slave species that we can be defeated." He rose, ancient but powerful. "There will be no peace. Only victory or annihilation, theirs or ours." He ordered total mobilization. Every ship, every reserve, the largest fleet in Imperial history. Admirals warned of leaving borders exposed. Thrawn smiled coldly. "If they rebel, we crush them after the humans. They are weak, broken. They will not move." He turned to the stars. "The humans think they are safe. They are wrong. I am coming with every ship the Empire has. No prisoners, no mercy, no survivors." His voice dropped to a whisper. "I will make them regret defying us." 6 months passed since the Battle of Seoul. 6 months of war. 6 months of change. What began as survival had become something else. A campaign, a crusade, a war of liberation. Humanity was no longer defending Earth. They were striking into the heart of the Corvathan Empire. Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Times Hope, a diplomatic vessel designed for first contact and alliance building. Around her, the crew monitored deep space communications far beyond anything humanity had attempted before. "Ambassador," her aide said, "we're receiving a transmission from the drill delegation." Elena nodded. "Put it through." The screen flickered and a drill appeared. A tall, muscular being with dark blue skin, a species that had served the Corvathans as soldiers for thousands of years, to fight and die for an empire that treated them as property. Now they were ready to fight for themselves. "Ambassador Vasquez," the drill said. His name was Thorik, and he led what remained of his people's resistance. "We have received word from our infiltrators. The Corvathan garrison on Drill Prime has been reduced to skeleton forces. If we strike now, we can take our homeworld back." "How many of your people can we count on?" Elena asked. 3 million soldiers, all veterans of Corvathan wars, all ready to die for freedom. Elena smiled. "Then let's make sure they don't have to die. Let's make sure they live to see freedom." The liberation of Drill Prime had been planned for weeks. Human ships would strike orbital defenses while drill ground forces rose up across the planet. It was the largest joint operation of the war so far, but far from the only one. Across Corvathan space, similar operations were underway. The Yith had provided detailed information about Corvathan military deployments, supply routes, and communication networks. Human strike forces used this information to hit convoys, resource stations, and strategic outposts. The Corvathans, who had spent millennia ruling through overwhelming force, suddenly found themselves unable to be everywhere at once. Their fleets were concentrated for the planned assault on Earth, their garrisons reduced, and their subjects were restless. Humanity was there to help them rise. Marcus Cole had spent the past months working with Nexus and the Yith engineers. Together, they had achieved things neither species could have accomplished alone. Human creativity combined with Yith expertise produced weapons and systems that outclassed anything the Corvathans possessed. The latest breakthrough was a stealth system allowing human ships to move nearly undetected through space. It wasn't perfect, close-range sensors could still detect them, but it was enough. Marcus watched as ships tested the system. They shimmered, faded, and disappeared entirely. "Remarkable," Nexus said. "We have worked on similar concepts for centuries, but the power requirements were too high. Your fusion systems are crude, but effective." Marcus smiled slightly. That's humanity in a nutshell. Nexus studied him with respect. When we first encountered your species, we thought you were doomed. Now I believe the Corvithans are the ones who are doomed. Not yet, Marcus said. Thrawn is still gathering his forces. The final battle hasn't happened yet. Nexus paused. There is something you must know. The Void Hammer. Marcus frowned. What's that? Nexus lowered his voice. A weapon, the most terrible ever created. It can collapse a star. Marcus went cold. Collapse a star? Yes, the Corvithans used it once. It destroyed an entire star system. Billions died. Why not use it again? Marcus asked. Because it is unstable. A mistake could destroy multiple systems or trigger a chain reaction. Nexus met his eyes. But Thrawn is desperate. A hologram appeared showing a station orbiting a dead world. Null point. The Void Hammer is here, heavily guarded. If used on Earth, your species will cease to exist. Marcus stared. We destroy it. Nexus hesitated. It could be modified. No, Marcus said firmly. We are not becoming what we fight. Nexus nodded slowly. You humans are strange. You have power, but choose restraint. News reached Admiral Cheney hours later. She convened an emergency council. This changes everything, she said. If Thrawn uses it, Earth is gone. A strike was suggested, but defenses were too strong. Nexus proposed another way. We can corrupt its activation sequence from inside the station. Elena nodded. Then we need a covert team. Marcus stood. I'll lead it. Cheney studied him. He was not a soldier, but he was the best choice. Take whoever you need. And don't fail. The mission to Null Point was planned over the following weeks. Marcus assembled a team of infiltrators and Yith engineers who knew the system best. Void Hammer systems. Drill soldiers trained for covert operations. Human special forces with experience in zero-gravity combat. They would travel on a modified ship with new stealth technology, invisible to most sensors and fast enough to evade anything that detected them. Once they reached Null Point, they would infiltrate the station, reach the Void Hammer's control center, and corrupt its targeting systems. Simple in concept, almost impossible in execution. While the mission was being prepared, the war continued. Human and coalition forces struck Corvithan targets across the Empire. They destroyed supply convoys, crippled manufacturing stations, and liberated colony after colony. Slave species oppressed for millennia rose up wherever the coalition appeared. The Corvithans found themselves fighting on dozens of fronts. Fleets meant for the assault on Earth were diverted to suppress rebellions. Resources meant for new weapons were spent repairing damaged infrastructure. And through it all, High Arbiter's Thrawn's grip on power weakened. Not everyone in the Empire agreed with his war. Some Corvithans believed negotiation was wiser than continued conflict. Others thought resources should be used to maintain control of the Empire's vast territory. Whispers of dissent spread through the highest levels of Corvithan society. Thrawn responded the only way he knew: force. Advisors who questioned his decisions disappeared. Commanders who failed were executed. The empire that had stood for 40,000 years was now held together by fear. But fear has limits. Elena Vasquez received a secret communication from a Corvithan admiral named Theendid, one of the defensive fleet commanders stripped to reinforce the assault on Earth. He was old, respected, and increasingly troubled. I do not contact you because I support your cause, he said in an encrypted message. I contact you because I believe Thrawn has lost his mind. He is preparing to use the Void Hammer not just against Earth, but against any system that resists. He speaks of cleansing the galaxy of inferior species. What do you want from us? Elena asked. I want you to win quickly, before he destroys everything, including my own people. His voice was heavy with exhaustion. Many Corvithans remember when the Empire stood for something other than conquest. Many of us want peace. Then help us get it. I cannot openly oppose my government, but I can provide information. Fleet movements, defense codes, anything to end this war faster. It was a risk, but Elena believed him. Send what you have. And when this is over, we'll build something better. The intelligence from Theendid was invaluable. It revealed Thrawn's invasion fleet, over 2,000 ships, the largest armada in history. It showed Void Hammer deployment and activation timelines. It exposed weaknesses in Axion Prime's defense grid and confirmed the attack on Earth would begin in 3 weeks. Cheni made her decision. We don't wait. We take the fight to them. The Coalition fleet assembled outside Corvathan territory, a force unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Human ships, Yith engineering vessels, drill warships, and others from a dozen species. 500 ships ready to strike at the Empire's heart. Meanwhile, Marcus Cole and his team launched toward Null Point. The stealth ship slipped through patrols and sensor nets undetected. At Null Point, they found the station exactly as described. A massive fortress orbiting a dead world. At its center was the Void Hammer, a colossal ring-like structure surrounded by generators and control systems, radiating dormant power. Getting in will be the hard part, Marcus said. Once inside, the Yith can corrupt the targeting software. And getting out? A drill soldier asked. Marcus paused. We focus on getting in. We'll figure out getting out when we need to. The infiltration began. Pods detached from the stealth ship, slipping through blind spots and attaching to an unused airlock. They cut inside. The station was heavily guarded. The team moved through corridors using Nexus's maps, avoiding patrols. When necessary, they struck quickly and silently. The drill excelled in close-quarters covert combat. They reached the control center within an hour. A vast room of monitors and systems, Yith technicians working under Corvathan oversight. Marcus's team neutralized the guards before an alarm could be raised. The Yith technicians, long enslaved and waiting for this moment, immediately began work on the systems. How long? Marcus asked. Minutes, one replied. The code is complex. We must corrupt it without triggering backups. Work fast, Marcus said. Have much time. Outside the control center, alarms began to sound. Someone had discovered the bodies of the guards. They know we're here, a drill soldier reported. Marcus looked at the door. They could hear footsteps approaching, many footsteps. Hold them off. Buy us time. The drill soldiers took positions around the door. When the first wave of Corvathan guards arrived, they met a wall of fire that pushed them back. But more were coming. More than they could hold forever. Almost there, a Yith technician said. Just a few more moments. Marcus watched the door, his soldiers fighting, the Yith working desperately. Then the door exploded inward. Corvathan special forces poured into the room. The drill soldiers went down fighting, taking several enemies with them. Marcus raised his weapon, but a blast caught him in the shoulder, spinning him to the ground. Through blurred vision, he saw a Corvathan commander standing over him, weapon aimed at his head. Human, the commander said with disgust. You think you can destroy the Void Hammer? You think you can stop the inevitable? Your species is already dead. You just don't know it yet. Marcus looked past him. Behind the commander, the last Yith technician, wounded and bleeding, reached the main console. His fingers moved across the interface. Done, the technician whispered, then collapsed. The commander spun, but it was too late. The screens flashed warnings. The targeting systems were corrupted. The Void Hammer was useless. No! The commander raised his weapon toward the console as if destroying it could undo what had been done. Marcus pulled a small device from his belt and activated it. An emergency beacon. You haven't won, the commander snarled. Thrawn will build another weapon. You've only delayed the inevitable. Marcus met his eyes. Delay was the plan. Moments later, the stealth ship crashed through the station's outer wall. The extraction was violent and chaotic. The surviving team was pulled aboard mid-motion. They escaped Null Point, but at a cost. Half the team was dead. Marcus was badly wounded. Still, they had succeeded. The Void Hammer could not be used against Earth. Across the galaxy, the Coalition fleet was already moving toward Axion Prime. The final battle had begun. Axion Prime burned in the distance. Admiral Cheni stood on the bridge of the Times Defiance, watching the largest battle in galactic history unfold. 2,000 Corvathan warships faced 500 coalition vessels. The Corvathan numbers were overwhelming but ineffective. Enemy dreadnought cluster at coordinates 774, Commander Rodriguez reported. They're trying to reform their center. Hit them with everything we've got. Don't let them organize. Coalition ships moved like water around stone. Impossible to predict, impossible to stop. Owen coordinated every vessel in real time. What looked like chaos was perfect control. Harmonic inverters shattered shields. Drone swarms slipped through defenses. Dreadnought after dreadnought fell. On Axion Prime, High Arbiter's Thrawn watched his empire die from his throne room atop the Imperial Mountain Palace. Orbital defenses are failing, an advisor said. Then send more ships. There are no more ships. Thrawn's hands tightened on his throne as red markers vanished from the display. The Void Hammer, he said. Activate it. Its targeting systems are corrupted. It cannot be aimed. Then fire it anyway. Target the human fleet. Their homeworld. Anything. The advisor hesitated. It could spread beyond the target. Could threaten Axion Prime. Thrawn's voice was cold. I don't care. If I cannot rule the galaxy, no one will. Activate it. The order was given. Across space, the coalition continued its advance, unaware that the final command had already been spoken. Cheney received reports of collapsing orbital defenses. Victory was near. Then her communications officer looked up, face pale with alarm. Admiral, we're detecting an energy surge. It's coming from Null Point. Null Point? The Void Hammer Station. Yes, the readings are massive. Whatever they're doing is drawing power from the entire system. Cheney's blood ran cold. Marcus Cole's team had corrupted the targeting systems, but they hadn't destroyed the weapon itself. If Thrawn was desperate enough to fire it anyway, get me Marcus Cole. Now. Marcus was in the medical bay of the Times Hope. His shoulder bandaged, but his mind sharp. When Cheney's message came through, he limped to a communication terminal. Admiral, what's happening? Thrawn is trying to activate the Void Hammer. Marcus thought quickly. He can fire it without targeting systems, but he can't aim it precisely. The collapse field will form, but it could drift. Could hit anything. Them. The system's sun. Can we stop it? The weapon takes time to charge. If we destroy the station before it reaches full power, the collapse field won't form properly. It'll dissipate. How much time? Marcus checked the data. 20 minutes. Maybe less. Cheney looked at the tactical display. Null Point was too far for most ships. Only one option remained. I'm taking the Times Defiance, she said. And anyone fast enough to follow me. 20 ships broke from the coalition fleet, light cruisers and destroyers built for speed. Cheney led them personally, pushing engines to their limit. Behind them, the battle for Axion Prime raged. Without her coordination, Owen took full tactical control of the coalition fleet. The AI had learned from thousands of battles. It no longer needed human direction, but it fought harder knowing they were watching. The strike force raced toward Null Point. When they arrived, the station came into view. The Void Hammer was active, glowing, bending space itself. All ships target the power generators, Cheney ordered. We don't need the whole station. Just stop the charging sequence. Corvathan defenders moved to intercept. A dozen warships stood between the coalition and the station. They opened fire. The first coalition ship exploded. Then another. They were outgunned, but they kept advancing. For Earth! Someone shouted. The strike force hit like a hammer. Ships died on both sides. Explosions lit the void. The Times Defiance was struck repeatedly, shields failing, hull breaching. Cheney did not slow. She drove her ship forward, weapons blazing. Coalition fire tore into the outer ring. One generator exploded, then another. Warning alarms screamed. The charging sequence destabilized. It's not enough, Rodriguez shouted. Cheney stared at the display. One generator remained. Half her fleet was gone. The Times Defiance was crippled. She made her decision. All surviving ships, disengage. Fall back to safe distance. Admiral, that's an order? She turned to her crew. It's been an honor serving with you. Now get to the escape pods. They understood. Some protested, some cried, but they obeyed. One by one, they abandoned the bridge until Cheney was alone. She took the helm herself. The Times Defiance was dying. Systems failing, fires spreading through its corridors. But its engines still worked, and she could still steer. Owen, she said. Are you there? Always, Admiral. The AI's voice was calm and steady. Calculate the best angle of impact to destroy that last generator. Calculating. Admiral, I must inform you that this action will result in your death. I know. Cheney looked at the void hammer growing brighter by the second. But it will save everyone else. That's a trade I'm willing to make. A pause. Then Owen spoke again. Admiral, it has been an honor to fight alongside you. On behalf of all Owen units, on behalf of humanity, thank you. Cheney smiled. Then she pushed the engines to maximum and aimed the Times Defiance at the final generator. The impact was catastrophic. The generator exploded. The chain reaction spread through the station. The charging sequence collapsed in on itself, and the void hammer tore apart, its energy dispersing harmlessly into the void. The threat was over. On Axion Prime, High Arbiter's Thrawn received the news. The void hammer was destroyed. His last hope was gone. He sat in silence as the palace shook from orbital bombardment. The coalition fleet had broken through the final defenses. Troops would be landing soon. His advisors had fled. His guards had abandoned their posts. He was alone. Footsteps echoed in the throne room. Thrawn looked up to see figures entering, humans, Drill, Yith, and others. Coalition forces had reached him. Elena Vasquez stepped forward. High Arbiter's Thrawn, she said. Your fleet is destroyed. Your weapon is gone. Your empire is collapsing. This war is over. Thrawn stared at her. At this small, fragile human who belonged to the species he had ordered exterminated, who had brought down everything he built. How? He asked hollowly. How did you do this? We ruled 1,000 stars. We had technology beyond your comprehension. How did primitives like you defeat us? Elena was silent for a moment. Then she shook her head. You really don't understand, do you? She said. You've been at the top so long you forgot what struggle is. You thought power was bigger ships, better weapons, longer history. She stepped closer. Power isn't what you have. It's what you're willing to do, what you're willing to sacrifice, what you're willing to become to protect what matters. We were a primitive species that the galaxy laughed at. We had one ugly ship and a desperate hope. We were told that we didn't matter, that we had nothing to offer, that we should accept our place at the bottom of the hierarchy and be grateful we were allowed to exist. She looked out at the assembled delegates. But we didn't accept that. Her voice was steady, carrying through the hall. We chose something else. We chose each other. We chose to fight for people we had never met. We chose to risk everything for a future we might never see. A pause. And that is what changed everything. The hall remained silent. This coalition was not built on power, she continued. It was built on trust. Not trust that the universe is safe, but trust that we will stand together when it is not. She stepped back from the podium. Let this be the lesson of our war. Strength is not domination. Strength is endurance. Strength is unity. And above all, strength is refusing to give up when everything says you should. Across the hall, representatives of many worlds listened. Not as subjects, not as conquerors, but as equals. The Galactic Coalition was no longer an idea. It was real. Humans and aliens, former enemies and new friends. We refused, not because we believed we were better than anyone. Just getting started. And it was going to be something the galaxy had never seen before. Not an empire built on fear. Not a dominion held together by force. Not a hierarchy of species ranked by power. But something far more dangerous to the old order. A civilization built on choice, on cooperation, on the refusal to let history decide what the future must be. Elena stood there a moment longer watching the stars. Ships moved across Earth's orbit like quiet promises. No longer invaders, no longer threats, but participants in something bigger than any one species could build alone. Marcus finally broke the silence. "Do you think they'll try again?" he asked. Elena didn't look away from the sky. "Yes," she said. "Someone always will." A pause. "But now they know what happens when they do." Behind them, the memorial flickered in the light of distant suns. Names of the dead. Sacrifices that had become the foundation of everything that now existed. Not an ending, a beginning. And somewhere in the vastness of space, the galaxy kept watching, careful now, uncertain now, no longer laughing. Because humanity had already answered the question that once defined them. And they had answered it with war, and with unity, and with survival. The story of the coalition wasn't peace. It was proof, and it had only just begun.